Okay, let's continue, inshallah. So, this practice problem, let's take a look at it. So, we are going to again add up the cash, the bank at home, gold, silver, all that is going to be added up, and a loan that we gave to the masjid. Again, like in the previous example, we want to pay zakat on it now. We don't want to delay it till after. So you will include that in your zakatable assets. That gives you this total of 38,500. Okay. The deductibles, your monthly mortgage, we're going to assume this is all capital, times 12. And there may be a mistake here. Let me see. Okay, no, it's fine. This plus shouldn't be here. Okay, the calculations are fine. This plus shouldn't be here because if it's lost cash, you don't deduct it and you don't pay zakat on it either. It's lost. Right. So once you just do this, this is your only deductible. Do that times 12, you're gonna get 20,400. Subtract that from your total assets. Your zakatable wealth is 80,100. 2.5% of that gives you $452.50. Okay. Any questions on this one? Yes. Yeah, so we added the cash from the bank and at home. We added the gold and silver, and we added the loan, money that is owed back to us. We said we're gonna pay zakat on it now. We're not gonna defer it until later. So that total gives us 38,500. And then to deduct, we just deducted the mortgage times 12, assuming it's all capital. And then we got 18,100 and then 2.5% of that.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Let's look at the zakat that is due on a business, a company. So these rulings will vary from business to business, the type of business it is, the type of services or products that it offers. Generally, if you have a business where you are selling some type of merchandise, zakat is due on the market value of the merchandise that you have. Okay, that's the summary of all of it. It's not due on your building. It's not due on any tools that you use in your business, whether it's a cash register, whether it's a machine, whatever it may be. It's not due on any equipment like you have in your business, tables, shelving, carts, baskets, anything like that. Zakat is not due on that. Or anything else you may need. Anything you need to run your business, zakat is not due on that. Only on the merchandise that you have. Let's say you have $20,000 worth of merchandise in storage that you're selling over time. Zakat is due on that full amount. Okay, that's the summary of that. And of course, any cash that you have in the business. Right? So that's the first one, cash. Cash receivables, meaning if someone owes you money, it falls under the previous categories. You sold something and now someone owes you money. So that's the next one, trade receivables. If someone owes you money for another reason in your business, zakat will be due on that. Okay, your business gave someone a loan and they owe it back to you, just like in a personal one, you will pay zakat on that. Okay, trade receivable, when you sold something, a person hasn't paid you yet, they bought it on credit, you have to pay zakat on that amount, right? Because it's like in a loan, when you give a loan and you're waiting to get it back, you pay zakat on it. right? So same thing with a product. You sold a product. Now money is owed to you for that, so you pay zakat on that amount. Okay, and then stock and inventory, like we mentioned, whatever you have in stock, whether it's on the shelves, whether it's in the warehouse, anywhere, you will pay zakat on that full amount. What you won't pay zakat on? Services receivable. If your business is such that it offers a service, not a product, there's no zakat on that. Okay, because a service in general is not something you pay zakat on. So if you provided someone with a service and now they owe you money for that, you don't pay zakat on that, because you look at what the money is in exchange for. Where it was a product, zakat would have been due on the product. So you pay zakat on the money that is due for that. Where it's a service, zakat is not due on the service itself. So then zakat will not be due on what is owed for the service. Okay. Prepaid expenses, something you've already paid, even though you may have had the option to pay it later, but you've already paid it, you can't deduct that now. You won't pay zakat on any either. It's something done and over with. Fittings and fixtures, like we mentioned, property, plant, equipment, intangible assets, licenses, trademarks, patents, anything like that. Anything you need to run your business from any aspect, there's no zakat on that. Okay, so just on two things, well, three things you want to say. One is any cash that your business has, whether it's be in the form of cash or in the bank, doesn't matter. Second is your merchandise, your stock inventory. And third is trades receivable, money that is owed to you for something, for a product that you sold. Okay. And when money is owed to you for a product that you sold, you only need to pay zakat on the price of the product, not the taxes that you're going to be paid for it. Okay. If you sold something for $1,000 and that person owes you like $1,200, let's say $200 is taxes, you don't have to pay zakat on that 200, because technically you're just taking that zakat on behalf of the government and you're going to give it ahead. That's not really yours. Right? You're going to pay zakat on the price, the market value of the product. Okay. Yes, we have a question.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. Just a little bit of confusion on the service receivables. Yeah, maybe I'm missing, maybe I'm confusing it with the fundamentals. So this is a way. So service receivables. So this is also basically, this could be my source of living, right? This could be my earnings. Like I performed a service and I am to be paid for it, but not yet paid for.
Yeah.
Okay. So perfect. Yeah. So accrued income wage is the key thing, I guess I'm getting to here. Okay.
Yeah. As long as your business involves like tangible products and so on, then you'll pay zakat on those. Right? If it's any type of service, whether you have, I don't know, a cleaning company, you have a design firm, you have anything, right? You have a car wash. If it's any type of service that you do in your business, zakat is not due on that, nor on any money that you are owed for those, any of the receivables. Yes. No, the money. Okay, so a very good question. The money that you make from the service, that's going to be added to your money that you have, and you pay zakat on that. Right? We didn't say that you don't pay zakat on the income from the service. You don't pay zakat on the service receivable. Meaning if you provided a service, now someone owes you money for that. They haven't paid you yet, you don't pay zakat on that. If they have paid you, then you pay zakat on that money, because now it's money that you have in your business or personally. Some deductibles in businesses, outstanding invoices, right? You bought from your supplier, you bought something, you owe money, you could deduct that. If your business uses software, okay, then it depends what type of purchase plan you have. If it's something that you, it's a perpetual subscription, then you could deduct that month's payment that you're going to make. Okay. If you've bought something like a software or machinery, and now you're just paying it off, then it falls under a debt that you owe. So you could deduct the next 12 months worth of payments. Okay. So the concepts are very similar from personal to business. The main difference is that in business, you pay zakat on commodities if you have them in your business, if you're selling merchandise. Whereas in personal, anything that you have for your use, you won't owe zakat on it, right? You have a car, you have multiple cars, you have a phone, you have computers, you have anything. You have homes, you won't pay zakat on those. Okay. There's a big discussion about if you have things that are extravagant. Someone has 10 cars, they only really need maybe 2 or 3 for their family. Do you owe zakat on the rest of them? So from the technical aspect, no, you don't. Okay, because there's a concept in zakat called malun nami, which means to simplify it, wealth that increases. There's something that holds monetary value for the sake of the monetary value itself, if that makes any sense, like cash, right? Cash or gold and silver. Whereas these other things, they're objects, they're commodities, they don't hold that intrinsic value of wealth. Okay. But if you have many extravagant things like that, then majority of ulama say that it's better to pay zakat on those things, right, as a precaution. If you have those things, you can obviously afford it. It's better to pay it. Okay. Yeah. So any invoices you owe to suppliers or anything else, utility bills, anything that is outstanding, you can deduct, or whatever is owed that month, you can also deduct. Taxes and so on, and loans. Well, taxes first. Again, if it's something that's owed previously, right? Let's say there's some type of tax that you could pay at any point in the year. Okay. But you know that this is the amount that I have to pay in this year. If you're doing your zakat calculations, you could deduct that because that is owed on you at that time. Right? That's the main requirement. At that point, it must be due on you. Okay. Loans is very similar to, completely similar to personal loans. If you have given someone money and you are able to pay the zakat every year, pay it. Otherwise, wait till you get it back and then pay zakat on it. The same thing. Now, in evaluating the stock, not stock in terms of like investments, this is stock like merchandise, right? In a business. So basically the easy rule to follow is you go with the market value. Okay. So that covers everything. Like if you have something that is damaged, right? You have a bunch of merchandise that's damaged. The market value is less than the rest of it, but go with whatever the market value of that is in the damaged condition. If we haven't talked about properties yet, but if you're building a property that's for resale, zakat is due on that, right? But if when your zakat date comes, the building is not done yet, whatever that property is worth in its current state, you pay zakat on that amount. Right? So if you just use that as a rule of thumb, whatever the market value is of your merchandise could be products, right? It could be houses, it could be cars, it could be anything. Whatever your merchandise is, whatever the market value is, whatever market value it has in its current condition, that is what you will pay zakat on. Okay. There's some more specific details here of all of this. Everyone who is registered will receive a copy of these slides, so you'll have all this information, inshallah. Some of the stuff is also mentioned in the course notes. Sorry? Government tax payable, meaning it's already due on you?
For example, in the middle of the year, like in the month of June, my zakat is due. But if it's January of next year, 6 months past, next year. zakat is due on October. So can I deduct the tax from this 26?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Okay, so for example, in the month of June, my zakat is due.
In June, your zakat is due. Okay.
This June is the middle of the tax year.
It's middle of the tax year. Income tax.
Income.
Okay, income tax. He's asking, can you deduct zakat? Do you deduct income tax from your zakat? No, usually not. Unless that's the month where you're paying your taxes, then you could deduct it. And because it's an expense that you know is coming up, but it's not due on you yet.
6 months already passed. Income tax.
6 months already passed. Yeah, okay, you could if you want on that amount. Yeah, because that sort of falls under the idea of where you have the option to pay something at any point in the year, right? Like for taxes, you're able to pay them ahead of time, right? If you want. So yes, you could deduct for the months that have passed. You could deduct that if you want. Okay, some quick examples of stock valuations. Again, stock with merchandise. Jewelers. All the gold, silver jewelry that they have in their shop, they will pay zakat on that. Even if it's not gold and silver, right? Because one is you pay zakat because it's gold and silver, and one is you pay zakat because it's your merchandise in your business, right? So for a jeweler, for example, they will pay zakat on the platinum rings that they have, the diamonds that they have, the rubies, the jewels. They will pay zakat on everything in there. Okay. A restaurant, for example, they will pay zakat on the market value of the ingredients. Okay, so they don't have to see what the value would be when they make the meals, because that increases, right? But whatever in the like I said, in the state that things are at that time. So someone has a French fry stand, for example, they're gonna pay zakat on all the potatoes that they have, right? The potatoes, the oil, maybe some spices, salt. That's what they're going to pay zakat on. They won't pay zakat on the stand. They won't pay zakat on the value of the fryer. They won't pay zakat on if they have a building or anything. They won't pay zakat on any of that. If they have a seating area, they won't pay zakat on the tables and the chairs. If they have art on the wall, anything like that, lightings, fixtures, no zakat is due on that. Okay, property development, like at the current market value, whatever condition it is in at your zakat date, you will pay zakat on that amount. Grocery, you have a grocery store, the value of everything in your store, you're going to pay zakat on that amount. Okay. Yes, the question for the tape.
Yes, so in terms of, let's say, the examples of restaurants or grocery stores, but let's take restaurants for example. So now, is it dependent in any way of it being profitable in any way? Like, for example, someone starts a restaurant and whether it's a struggling restaurant, let's say, I don't want to get into the intricacies of it, but just to kind of give a general overview, or do they have to just, if they have assets in there, like the ingredients, as you mentioned, do they still pay zakat on it?
So yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer that this is very similar to someone who has only jewelry. Okay, if they don't have cash, they only own jewelry. They say, well, how do I pay my zakat? I only have jewelry. You have to sell part of that jewelry and pay your zakat off. Okay, so same thing with merchandise. If the business is struggling, yes, you're not making profit, but if you have merchandise that's above nisab, you need to now sell some of that and pay your zakat that is due on that, because you have that amount at that time.
All right.
Okay, so some guidelines you could use to determine whether you have to pay zakat on your business merchandise or not. You're buying and selling stuff, when do you pay zakat, when do you don't. So this is the main thing, a clear intention to resell. Okay, and the main words you want to focus on, clear and resell. If there's any sort of doubt that am I going to resell this or not, I don't know, zakat is not due. Okay, if you know definitively I am buying this to make a profit off of it, I'm going to sell it again, zakat is due on that. Okay. If you want to use it for personal use, no zakat. No clear intention, you don't know, I'm buying it, let's see what happens, no zakat. A conditional intention, if the value goes up, I will sell it, no zakat. Okay, you need to have a definitive decision, intention that I am buying this, I'm going to sell it. Then zakat is due. The last one, that you bought something like a property to resell and you have it posted to sell, and in the meantime it's being leased, you pay zakat on the property still. Because it's the same thing, you bought it to sell it, you're just trying to sell it at this point. It's like someone who has a store, they have merchandise, they bought that from the supplier to sell. It's not sold yet, they're still paying zakat on it. Same thing with the property. If properties are your merchandise, you have it, you're waiting to sell it, you're going to pay zakat on it. Now that brings us into properties. Again, the only time zakat is due on properties if you bought it to sell it. That's your job, you're a developer, you buy properties, you make buildings, you sell them. Zakat is due on all of your assets, your building assets. Again, just the buildings though, right? Or just the properties, you could say. If you have any tools, let's say you own some of those construction trucks that you use, zakat is not due on those, right? Anything you need to use to run your business, zakat is not due on that, regardless of what the nature of your business is. Okay. So residential property, doesn't matter how many you have, zakat is not due. But like I said, if you have so many that it goes into extravagance, then it's better to pay zakat on the extra ones, because obviously you can afford it if you have that many. Rental properties, you bought a house or something and you're renting it out, no zakat due on it. Yes, the rent that you get from there, it'll be added to your own personal assets, or if it's a company that owns the building, the company's assets, and you pay zakat on that. But the property itself, no zakat on that. You haven't decided if you're going to sell something or not, no zakat. If you bought it to sell it, yes, zakat. If you bought it to sell it, and then you change your intention, no, I'm not going to sell it, I'm going to sit on it for a while, no zakat due on it. Okay. Any questions on businesses or buildings or real estate or anything? Oh, we have a question here. Can we deduct our taxes owed to date? Okay, I think that's what you asked. Yes, you could. So if we have not paid taxes on our salary from 2021 and we have to pay it by the end of April, can we deduct that? Yes, you could. Yes, you could. Okay, more practice. You have personal cash, gold and silver, business merchandise, monthly rental income. No, I don't remember how I did the answer. I don't think I included this in that month's income. Okay. Monthly mortgage, we're going to assume this is a capital amount, 2,000. A loan you gave and you want to pay zakat on it now, we're not going to defer it. Okay, overdue invoices, trades receivable, services receivable. See if you can come up with the zakat amount that is due. Again, for those who came in a bit later, there's coffee and stuff on the side if anyone wants. We'll have lunch in our next break, inshallah. Question?
So the gold is, you have the gold and you are wearing it at the home use or whatever.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a.
Yes.
Put it like 12 carat or 24 carat.
Yeah.
How many carat is the gold is gonna be on that?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and that is like a resale value or like
Market value.
sorry?
Market value.
market value,
Yeah.
like let's see, you're going to, if I go buy something like a $500, when I go and sell it, it's not gonna be at that price. So the buying price on it, the zakat or
The selling price.
the selling.
Yeah.
When you go sell it,
Yeah, the selling price, because that's what it's worth right now. That's what someone will be willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So that's what you pay out. So was there a question someone had online? Someone was speaking. No? Okay, ready to go? We need some more time. Let's take a look. Okay. So all those that are in green above, we add those to get our gross assets. And like I said, I didn't include the rental income. Rental income, if you had already received it that month, it's already a part of your personal cash, right? So you add those up, you get your gross zakatable assets of 81,600. Your deductibles, your mortgage, so 3,000 times 12, plus your overdue invoices, that gives you 41,400. Deduct that from the gross, your zakatable wealth is 40,200, and your zakat due is 2.5% of that, $1,005. Yeah, like I was saying before, the difference in zakat and taxes. Imagine someone who makes $80,000 a year telling your tax is only $1,000 this year. How happy would they be, right? They would happily give it. No problem, take it. Okay, any questions on this one? Yes. Yeah, so the rental income, we said that if someone had already received the rental income, it's already included in the 42,000, and services receivable are not zakatable, so that doesn't count for anything. Okay. Looking at investments. Let's just talk about like stock market investments. There are three scenarios. Two main ones. The last one is pretty simple. The first one is if you are a short-term trader. Okay. Again, like I said, I'm not going into the permissibility of certain types of wealth or transactions in this workshop. Day trading, as a rule, is not allowed. But if someone is doing it, the stocks, the shares that they hold, that is considered their business merchandise. They're buying it to sell it at a profit. So you will pay zakat on the full value of that portfolio. Okay. And short term means less than 1 year. So even if you're not doing day trading, if you're doing short term, so anything longer than 2 to 3 days is permissible to do in trading stocks. Okay. So if you're doing, but you're short term, you buy it after a few weeks, you sell, you buy, you sell. If it's within 1 year, then that's considered your business merchandise. It's not considered, from Sharia's perspective, it's not considered an investment. It's merchandise that you bought and you're selling it, buying, selling. Just like if you had a small shop where you bought inventory every day, every few days, you bought it, you sell, you'll pay zakat on the value that you have on your zakat date. Same thing with your shares that you own in a business, in a company. Okay. So that's easy to calculate. You do the full calculation. Scenario 2, this is probably one of the two more complicated calculations. This is one, and the one on pension funds, RSPs. We'll look at that. I think it's next. So if you are doing long-term trading, you buy stocks, shares, and you hold them. You want to hold them until retirement or for at least a few years so the value goes up, and then you're going to sell it. Now this is an investment. Okay. Now how Sharia views this is that you are an owner of that company, right? And you are, even legally, you're a proportionate, maybe a very small percentage, but you own that amount of the company. So you have to pay zakat on that company, just like you would pay zakat on your own company. What does that mean? You have to see now, okay, does the company have cash, liquid assets? Does the company have inventory? You're going to then pay zakat on your proportionate share of that total value. Let's say for example, again, not going into the permissibility of which stocks you could own, which you can't. Let's say you own 100 shares of Air Canada. Okay. And that happens to be 0.1%, 0.01 of their full market cap. Okay. Their inventory is not their planes. They don't sell planes, right? Their inventory is everything else that they use to run everything else they sell while running their business, right? So that could be all the food that they sell on board, any products, things they sell, right? So something like Air Canada, the majority of their things won't be zakatable because the plane is a tool for them. But let's say the value of everything that they own, that merchandise-wise, food and products, is $1 million, right? Let's just say $1 million. You have to pay zakat on 0.01% of that $1 million. Okay, because you own 0.01% of Air Canada, that is the total zakatable amount of that company, and you will pay zakat just like if you owned 100% of the company, you would pay zakat on the 100 million, but you own 0.01%, so you're going to pay zakat on 0.01% of that company. Okay. This is the most accurate way to pay zakat on companies. Okay, you actually go into, I mean, probably every stock that you invest in now, you have access to the company's financial reports. So you could go into them, see on your zakat date how much liquid assets they had, how much cash and so on, how many trades receivable they had, and the value of their merchandise that they have. Right? You could get that, but that's not all, right? Just like in your own company, you would deduct things that you owe, invoices and debts and so on. If the company has, let's say Air Canada had from $100 million of the total zakatable assets, they have 40 million of debts. You're going to subtract that. So now you will pay zakat on 0.01% of 60 million, not 100 million. You're treating it just like your own company, just the only difference is you're paying zakat on the proportionate amount that you own of that company. Okay. Like I said, that's the best way to do it. That's the most accurate way. A second way, there's three ways to do it. A second way is you use this formula. Okay. Where it's zakatable asset ratio times the current value of your holdings. What's the zakatable asset ratio? That's the total current assets that the company has divided by the market cap of the company. The market cap is the total amount of the shares that it would have, the value. So you divide the total assets of the company divided by the market cap. I have an example for this formula. You own 10 stocks of company ABC. You're a long-term investor, right? Company's total current assets are 154 billion. The company market cap is 2 trillion, and the stock price is $120. You own 10 of them. Okay. The first thing you need to do is find the zakatable asset ratio. So, like we said, you take the current assets divided by the market cap. So current assets, the red from the red here, 154 billion, divided by the market cap of 2 trillion, you get 0.077. Okay, that's the asset ratio. Then you multiply that by the value of the stocks that you own. If you own 10 stocks that are valued at $120 each, that means you own $1,200 worth. So you do 0.077 times 1,200 and you get $92.40. That's how much zakat you pay. Okay. This method is not as accurate as the first one because this formula has been derived to work as an average for all companies. Right? This is derived by the National Zakat Foundation. This and the proxy that we're going to look at next. Basically, they look at a large number of the larger companies in the world, and they measure how many liabilities they have, how many debts, how much debt they owe versus their total assets, and this formula works. It actually works. It's pretty close to being very accurate, this formula. Okay, so if you don't want to go the first route of going into the balance sheets and doing all the calculations for the company, you could use this formula. This also works. This is fine. You will be paying a little bit more, most likely, in this one than if you do the exact calculations that way. Okay. The third way is to use a proxy. A proxy, again, what the National Zakat Foundation did is they look at I think they told me this recently, a few hundred of the Sharia compliant companies of the S&P 500. And they go in and look at what percentage of their assets are zakatable after looking at their total assets, their liquid assets, their debts and liabilities, and they came up with 30%. Now this value, it changes year to year. Every year they do a new assessment. Last year was 27%. This year is 30%. This is the most cautious route because most of the companies are well under this. Okay, some are 10%, 15, 20. Most of them are under this. But because this is done as like a blanket calculation of everything at once, you have to take a higher amount for to make sure you're not missing out on anything. So you could use this 30%. So what you would do then, you take the total value of your stock investment portfolio. Let's say that the total value is $10,000. 30% of it is $3,000. $3,000 will be zakatable. The rest will not. Okay, so that's 3 ways to calculate zakat on stocks, shares, investments. Right? One is if you're, I'm sorry, for the second scenario. Right? One is you go in and do all the precise calculations, and that's where you're going to end up paying the least. Okay, so if that's a concern to you, if funds are tight or something, you should go in and do that, and you'll have to pay less than the other 2 methods. The more general method, the more mediocre, you could say balanced method, is to use this formula. And the easiest way to do it, when you're going to end up paying a little more, is to use the proxy of 30%. Okay. The third scenario, like I mentioned, is if you're selling you're cashing out at that time when your zakat is due, you're selling all your investments, your stocks, and whatever amount you would get at that time, minus taxes and fees that would be owed. Right? So if you have something like an RRSP, if you withdraw funds, you're going to be penalized on that. Right? So you minus any of those penalties and the taxes you would owe, and you pay zakat on the rest of the full amount. Okay. Any questions on these shares, stocks? Can you explain again the approximate 30%? Yeah, so the 30% it's taken as an average of what amount of most companies' assets are zakatable. Because after looking at hundreds of companies, this was an average that was taken out, that most companies are under this in terms of how much zakat they would pay. Right? So they looked at their liquid assets, the cash that they have. They looked at the value of their merchandise, any trades receivable, and then they subtracted. And then they looked at how many liabilities they have, how much money they owe, debts, and they were left with 30%. Like I said, in average, 30% of their assets were zakatable. So we could use that to apply to all other companies as well. But like I said, someone wants to be, this is usually going to be the more cautious route because you're paying more. But if someone wants to make completely sure that they're paying exactly how much is owed precisely for each company, then you got to go in and do the calculations and determine it that way. Okay. Okay, next is pension funds. You guys want a break or you want to keep going? Good. Yes, question, Brother Ahmed?
Yeah, yes, please. About the proxy 30%. So let's say if someone owns shares in a company, so let's say, for example, that person has like 100 shares. So that means he multiplies 100% by 30. So I don't get it yet. So he has to pay like the zakat on 30.
Say if you own 100 shares,
Yeah.
and each share is worth $10.
Yeah.
Okay, that means the total value of your portfolio is $1,000.
That's right. Yeah.
So you will pay zakat on $300, 30% of that.
Okay, 30% of the $1,000.
Yeah, 2.5% of the $300.
Excellent. I got it now. Thank you.
Okay, pension funds. This could be of many different types. If one that applies to you is not included in here, You can come see me afterwards and we could go over that. But this generally covers many of them. Okay, our ESP, our RSP. Again, not going into which ones are permissible and which ones are not. What we need to look at first is the money that is in that fund. Where is it coming from? If you have never put any money into that yourself, but I guess your employer either contributes for you or they deduct it from your paycheck and they put it into there. Okay, that's considered employer contributions. We're going to talk about that. Okay. If you put something yourself, meaning you get the funds in your account, then you put money back into it, that's employee contributions. Or if you voluntarily tell your employer that this percent of my salary, apply it towards my pension fund. Okay, that's employee, your own contributions. If you have employer contributions, meaning what the employer is putting into the account, you're going to see, is it vested or not vested? Vested meaning, is it yours? Right? If you change companies tomorrow, will you retain those funds or not? Or is it only as long as you're with that company? If it's not vested, it's not your money, no zakat is due on that. Okay. Basically, it's a promise to give you money if you stay with that company until you retire. So no zakat is due on that. If it's vested, meaning it's yours, then it combines with your own contributions. Now we're going to see, do you pay zakat on that or not? Okay. Now you got to look at two things here. The pension fund, do you have access to it? Meaning, if you want to withdraw money, could you do that? Or is it closed? Can you not access any of those funds? Okay. Looking first when you can't access, because that's most common. Well, both are. Looking first when you can't access it. Next, you need to see. Okay, no, not next. Let's come back. If you don't have access to it, zakat is not due on it. Okay. At that time. When you do get the funds, when you retire or so on, whatever you contributed to it, zakat is due on that. You got to backdate it and pay zakat on that, because that's money that you had and then you put into there, right? So if you even want, you could pay zakat on that annually if you don't want to pay it all at the end. That's okay. Right? But any other wealth that came from your employer, even if it's yours, you didn't put that into there, and now you don't have access to it either, no zakat is due on that. Once you retire, once you start getting money from there, then you pay zakat on that time, on those amounts, no backdating. Right? But what you put in yourself, you could pay zakat annually, or you could pay zakat when you get the funds later on. Okay. But here you say this it is zakatable. That is because a group of scholars, and I debated a lot before today whether I should put zakat or not zakatable here. Many scholars say that if the funds are invested, okay, because you have, let's take the example of an RRSP. Okay, if it's in a savings account, it's just there, no zakat is due on that. Okay, except for your own contributions, like I said. But if it's being invested, then what many scholars say, many senior scholars around the world, they say that because it's being invested and you're benefiting from it, you have what we call, you have ownership of it. Hukman. Hukman is a term in Sharia, meaning it's not a literal ownership, but it's figurative. But because the funds, they're in your name, your employer gave them to you, and they're invested in some stocks or shares of a company, you're benefiting from that investment. So you should still pay zakat on that. Okay. This is one of those places where everyone can see for their own circumstance. If they're struggling financially, and it would be difficult for them to pay zakat on this, it's okay, you don't have to pay it. But if you have the means to do it, then it's better to pay zakat even on this, because like I said, it's being invested, you're benefiting from that investment, so it's good to pay zakat. It's better to pay zakat on that. That's why here it says that it is zakatable. Okay, so that's when you don't have access to it. When you have access to it, meaning you could withdraw the funds, but there will be penalties and taxes that will be due. Okay, it is zakatable in both cases, whether it's a savings or invested. But what varies is that if it's in savings, the zakat is due on the full amount minus the taxes and penalties that would apply if you withdrew those funds now. Okay. If the funds are invested and you have access, you're allowed to withdraw them, then again, you will pay zakat, but on the proxy amount, okay, minus the taxes and penalties. So I mean, I wrote proxy here, but if you want, you could go find out where your money is invested and then do all the calculations that way. You could do that as well. Or you could just use the proxy amount, 30%, minus the taxes and the penalties, and pay zakat on the remaining balance. Okay. So a few variables you have to look at here. Where the money is coming from. Do you have access to it or not? And what type of account are the funds currently in? Based on all of that, the rulings will change. Okay. Our ESP is very similar. Our ESP is more of a trust account. And I'm not getting into trust today because they get complicated. But you could apply this to RESP as well. The RESP, you generally don't have access to it. You're not allowed to withdraw it when the child is in university. So that would fall under no access. And then you got to see, are the funds invested or are they just in a savings account where the money is gathering? Yes,
Yes, for access, funds are invested, zakatable.
Yeah.
Now, of course, so for example, where the funds are being left in the RSP of whatever kind, so in terms of the taxes, would we just calculate based on the highest marginal at the time? Or what,
Yes.
in any location, whichever province, location you live in?
Yeah, whatever amount of the marginal would apply to you.
Sounds good. Okay, exactly.
And they're usually pretty high amounts, like 30%.
Very high.
That, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can deduct that. Right. So honestly, if I think most our RSPs fall under this, where you are allowed to withdraw if you have to, but you're going to be penalized for it. But you're going to end up paying much less than the full amount of the RRSP because first you're taking the proxy amount. So right away you drop 30% down to 30%, and then you withdraw the taxes, which usually going to be another 30, 40% and the penalties. So you won't be end up paying much in here. Okay. We have two practice problems here. I want to give you guys a break. Okay, let's do one, and then we'll take a break. I'll put the second one up. We'll take a break, a longer break, and then you could work on that when you get a chance. So take a few minutes for this one. It's just about investments. 3 stock investments, ABC, and then 1 RRSP with access and savings. I'll remind you for access and savings, it's this one here. So full amount minus penalties and taxes. And we said that. Oh, I didn't write the penalties here. Okay, so we said there's no penalties. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so take a couple minutes to try to work this out. Okay, right here. Yeah, sorry. Right. Withdrawal penalty is 2,000. Right, so apply that and then use the proxy of 30%. Are we allowed to ask questions on what is halal about investment? That's a very long discussion. I won't be going into that right now. If there's time at the end of the Q&A session, I can touch upon it briefly, inshallah. There's a question, would it be possible to have your email for possible follow-up questions? Yes, I'm gonna give you guys a few ways to follow up with questions afterwards, inshallah. Okay, let's look at this quickly. So the total of the investment portfolio was 7,000 for these three. The zakatable amount of that is 30%, 2,100. So we're gonna pay zakat on this amount. And then the RRSP after taxes and penalty, we said that was 2,000. So we're down to 5,000. Adding these two up, we'll get our total of 7,100. And we pay zakat of 2.5% of that, $177.50. All right, any questions on this one? This one was rather simple. Next one's a little more complicated. And then we have one at the end that's going to be the most complicated one. Okay, so I will put this next one up. And let's take a break. Let's take half an hour. You guys can have your lunch as well. It's available on the table. Just grab a box and a drink. Yes. And then we'll come back at about 1:30, inshallah. Right? We'll have Dhuhr Salat at the end, inshallah, of the program. Not right now.